Thank you so much. Has everybody seen the pictures and the posts of George Okapi already? If you haven't, it's on the Facebook page. He's adorable. Go check it out. But in order to talk a little bit about Okapi and their conservation status in the wild, really the group that is working to protect them. We have with us Lucas Mears, who worked at the Jacksonville Zoo. He's been in the zoo field for a long time, he's still based in that area, and now works with the Okapi Conservation Project. And so it's here to talk a little bit about everything Okapi. And let's give a big round of applause for being here. And take it away. My name is Lucas Mears, and I am the program officer for the Okapi Conservation Project. I have to say it's an extreme pleasure to be back here in Brevard Zoo. I was here before COVID one time when I was on a conservation committee with the Jacksonville Zoo and Gardens and chatting with Jody Palmer and talking all things zoo conservation. And it's incredible to be back here. Brevard Zoo has a wonderful reputation among the zoo community as pioneers for a lot of community conservation work. Restore Our Shores, the Oyster Project. And we always envied that in Jacksonville, and so it's exciting to be here and giving a talk about some of the work that I've been involved with since Jacksonville. And Brevard Zoo has a fantastic reputation of just the community involvement. Brevard Zoo is built by the community. Has anyone been here since, when did Brevard Zoo start? 94? Has anyone been here since then? On and on? Okay, late 90s maybe? That's incredible. I love it. I love hearing all these stories, and I feel like I did this presentation at 12 o'clock today, and there were so many volunteers, and they were so energetic and in love with Brevard Zoo, and I just love that whole story about it. So you guys have a fantastic reputation among the zoo community with community involvement and community conservation. So thank you so much for having me. I worked at the Jacksonville Zoo and Gardens in various capacities for 8 years, 2013 through 2021. I started in development and philanthropy, and then moved over to marketing and public relations and event planning. I used to plan all the events at the zoo, and then I transitioned over into conservation, which is where my true passion is. And while I was at the zoo, I helped develop our conservation program, and also working part-time for the Okapi Conservation Project. Part of the zoo's commitment to conservation was paying for my salary to devote a lot of my time and effort and skills and abilities to run the project. Like many people here, I have always had a fascination with animals. I won't talk about myself too much. I always was catching lizards, frogs, snakes, turtles, whatever I could get my hands on. I was telling Zach last night when we went out to dinner, I'm from that St. Louis area. I had a big piece of plywood, and I had every species of snake listed on the board, and I tallied all of them that I would catch. And I had a whole, who that was, I need to ask my mom. But I love animals so much, and I obviously was destined to be in the zoo and conservation field. I got my engagement photos taken at the Jacksonville Zoo and Gardens. We were standing in this pose for a long time because I really wanted the giraffes to start breeding in the background. It never happened, and then the guests started showing up, and my wife thought it was And I will touch on a little bit. So I'm in a very unique position now that I kind of somehow was able to convince and work out. So I actually left the zoo side of my job and replaced it with sea turtles. So I work with Okapi, and I also work with sea turtles locally in St. Johns County, just over here. And I've been doing sea turtle nest monitoring since 2011, and now I also lead a group of 42 volunteers that go out into the community. We patrol the beach every day of the week during nesting season, looking for, documenting, monitoring, and tracking and evaluating sea turtle nests for the state of Florida. So sea turtles are another one of my passions, but today I'm going to talk to you about Okapi. We're called the Okapi Conservation Project, but we protect so much more than just Okapi. Our mission is to protect the endangered Okapi while preserving the biological and cultural diversity of the forest. And so the Okapi is a very well-respected, very well-revered species in Democratic Republic of the Congo. Okapi is on everything. They have Okapi cigarettes, Okapi logistics, Okapi gum, Okapi water. The main radio station is Radio Okapi. Everything is centered around Okapi in this country. Kind of similar how we have the bald eagle and everything on our currency. There's also Okapi on their currency too. It's only found in the Democratic Republic of Congo, and we utilize the Okapi as an umbrella species anyone know what an umbrella species is? Yes?
Is it where, like, protect one and protects everyone?
Yes, if you protect one species, you protect them all. So we leverage the Okapi's reverence and respect to protect all of the species in the forest. So by protecting the forest for the endangered Okapi, you're also protecting bongo, you're also protecting forest elephants, and you're also helping preserve the traditional lifestyles of the indigenous people that share the rainforest home with the Okapi. It's very remote. I took this video, it's kind of stop and go of the rainforest flying into our station. It's smack dab in the heart of Africa. It's often called the Heart of Africa by the novel by Joseph Conrad. Thank you. It's slipping me. It's a closed canopy forest, so very little light actually reaches the forest floor in the primary forest. When I go there, I go once per year. It takes me 3 days to access our station. It takes me 3 days to get there. Upwards of 6 to 7 flights, depending on how the flights arrange. It takes a long time, and I'm away from home for a decent chunk of time. This is kind of standing in the secondary forest. So I said the primary forest is a closed canopy forest. Secondary forest doesn't have those massive trees. And so this was one of our trips out to set up our camera traps. And we were trudging through the forest. We just parked on the side of the road. And there used to be a lot of logging when the Belgians owned the Congo in the early 1900s. It was a big logging factory. And they would just be logging these massive trees. So there's a lot of secondary forest, so light does make it through. But this is kind of what we're walking through when we're setting up our camera traps and looking for a copy. Democratic Republic of Congo is the second largest country on the continent of Africa, behind Algeria, but only, I think, like 40,000 square miles. It's outlined in red, and it encompasses a majority of the rainforests in Central Africa, often called the Congo rainforest or the Congo Basin, named after the Congo River that flows all the way to the Atlantic Ocean, the mouth that is right here. There is only a couple miles of coastline for Congo. And we are located in the Okapi Wildlife Reserve. It's this green area right here. And the range of the Okapi is this orange area right here. They're only found in the Democratic Republic of Congo. And when the Okapi Wildlife Reserve was created in 1992, this area was selected because we thought it was known to be the highest density of Okapi population throughout their known range. And so when the reserve was created, Okapi Wildlife Reserve, Wildlife Conservation Society, World Wildlife Fund, and the government of the Democratic Republic of Congo helped decide the boundaries with a lot of community input and involvement. And they chose the specific boundaries of these little orange areas, which are agroforestry zones, and these light green areas, which are subsistence hunting zones for the indigenous people that live in the forest. And so it was critical when we created the reserve that we didn't want the idea of a national park, because there's a lot of controversy when national parks are created, because if there's anyone living within the boundaries, they are removed from the national park because you're not allowed to live inside of a national park. Whereas with the reserve, people can live inside of the reserve. And so there are specific zones where certain activities are allowed that the communities chose in order for them to continue living out their lives and their traditional lifestyles. And so with agroforestry, we have these orange striped areas, orange or red, whatever color that is. And people can use sustainable agriculture or any type of agricultural methods to provide food for their families. The catch is, in one of the restrictions, is there are no plantations, no banana plantations, no cocoa plantations. Nothing that is grown inside of the reserve can be exported out of the reserve for profit. And that then eliminates any temptation for any massive monocrop plantings or anything like that, which could decimate the forest. And then these light green areas are where the indigenous Mbuti and FA peoples that share the rainforest home, where they can engage in a lot of their subsistence hunting, traditional lifestyle practices, where they go out into the forest. They're allowed to hunt specific species, not any of the endangered species, including Okapi, but they can hunt small duikers, blue duikers, yellow duikers, using their traditional hunting methods like nets and a bow and arrow. And then these dark green areas are where no human activity allowed. For simplicity's sake, the green area is kind of like a national park. No people, you're not even allowed to access it unless you have special permits. You want to say, we are based in Okapi, which is kind of like the capital of the reserve, where the eco guards, the government officials that are tasked with protecting the forest, that's where they're based, and this is where we're also based. And so this is the town of Okapi. When we first started the project in 1987, I like to give my boss, John Lucas, his last name is my first name. I like to give him a lot of trouble because he started the project 6 months before I was born, so the project is, it just makes him feel old. Sometimes I like to rub it. So this is the town of Okapi. It used to just be a couple of houses along this main road. This is a main thoroughfare through the entire country. It almost bisects the entire continent of Africa. And so there's a lot of trade that goes through this. The reserve is closed at 6 p.m. And then it reopens at 6 a.m. So once you're inside of the reserve, you have to stay overnight. And so we often get some truckers that will stay overnight in Okapi, which is why it has grown a little bit. In our station are these couple of green routes right here, where we used to have Okapi Power Station in a protected area of the forest. And so when I go to Okapi, this is where I go and stay in the state of the house. This is an airstrip. You can tell I took this photo from an airplane. This is an airstrip, and this was an absolutely critical piece of infrastructure that we constructed out of abandoned plots of farmland. So we didn't destroy any forest when we created the airstrip in 1994. It was all abandoned plots of farmland. And this has been the best decision for our project in recent years, because it is very difficult to travel anywhere in Congo. It's very insecure. I'll go into a lot more detail about later. But we often cannot travel on the roads, and we can only access via plane for safety of us and our staff. It's one of the most biodiverse areas in the entire continent of Africa. The only country that outpaces Democratic Republic of Congo in Africa for biodiversity is South Africa, and it's because they have an incredible amount of plant species, which I also love plants. But as far as animals go, Congo has the highest biodiversity of animal species, including some endemic species like Okapi, which are really down here. Congo peafowl, which is related to the Indian peafowl, peacock. We also have leopards, but the leopards in Congo are much darker in coloration. They're almost melanistic, and we've gotten a lot of almost black panther. I would say black panther, but it's much, much darker orange coloration than what we would typically see on Threats to Okapi. The main threat to Okapi is the loss of habitat, and that occurs through a few different ways. The number one threat is the threat of slash and burn agriculture. And what that is when farmers or community members will come in to an area, a plot of land, and they'll chop down all the trees, they'll burn the area, they'll burn all the trees, and that puts the nutrients in the soil, and then they'll plant their crops. The crops will take all the nutrients out of the soil, and the next season they'll do the same thing. They'll cut down the plot of land, slowly encroaching into the rainforest. Another threat is gold mining, gold and diamond mining in particular inside the reserve. There is a lot of mining for a lot of our coltan and the minerals that are used in cell phones and electronics. In other areas of the range within the reserve, it's primarily gold and diamond mining. This is an illegal mine that is the government is having huge difficulty in maintaining control over and evicting a lot of the miners. So clearly you can see that this is a lot of loss of habitat. Also poaching. For so many years, people were only poaching for primates, for protein, for food. So when you have all of these miners that are coming into the forest, there's no grocery stores, so where are you going to get your food? You're going to be hunting all the animals in the forest. And so there's a direct correlation with the number and size of mines with the amount of poaching that occurs. But then we also have poaching for elephants too. The big poaching rings come in for forest elephants. And so recently, the International Union for Conservation of Nature classified the African savanna elephant as a different species from the African forest elephant. Scientists have been saying this for years. Finally, IUCN recognized it, I think it was just this past year. They even have different kinds of toes, their tusks are shaped different, their tusks are Forest elephant tusks are much denser, so their ivory is about 10 times the price of ivory from savanna elephants. So people are poaching elephants and primates primarily. Up until 2019, there was really no evidence of poaching of okapi. In 2019, we started seeing an uptick of trafficking and poaching and trafficking of okapi skin and parts, okapi fat, okapi meat, okapi bones, and okapi skins. And we are working with a local Congolese NGO that's doing a lot of the investigation on this, a lot of secret investigation, so I can't reveal too much, but we are looking to address this threat and really trying to capture what's the reason behind it, where they're going, where the poaching is actually happening, where in the okapi's ranges are they poaching these animals. The skins are suspected to go to the Middle East for decoration or kind of a status symbol, because their skins are very beautiful. Their fat and bones are thought to be trafficked to Southeast Asia for medicinal purposes. Obviously, nothing has been proven. And then the meat is usually consumed locally. And so what we have with the Okapi Conservation Project is a three-pronged approach. It's a holistic approach. And when I go into detail about a lot of these approaches, you'll see that we're very community-focused. All of our work, you would almost classify us as a humanitarian organization because all of our work focuses on the people. Often people are the solution to any problems. Often people might be the cause of some of those issues that we're seeing. But you won't have a conservation project unless you're involved in the community and supporting and working with the people, because the communities need to have that investment in order for you to be any sort of, have any success and to be able to scale up in programs. You can even see it with the Restore Our Shores project with regards to by getting the community involved, planting the little mango property pools, taking them home. You have some investment. It becomes your plant. Same thing with the oyster bags and the oyster, what do we call them, the oyster cages. You have them on the dock, so you're able to expand your project and scale up, and you get that community investment because there's people that are helping and they're feeling like they're a part of it. And so all of our work goes to supporting the people and making sure that they have what they need in order to support our work and our mission. Our three-pronged approach is wildlife protection, community assistance and engagement, and conservation education and awareness. With all of our community-focused programming, there's always an element of conservation education, because why are we here? We're here to protect Okapi and the forest. And so when we're talking about protecting the people or improving their livelihoods, we also want to have an element of why are we doing this? We want to help you, we want to improve your livelihood, but we ultimately want to protect Okapi and the rainforest for everyone. The first prong is wildlife protection. We work under a contract of collaboration with the Institute in Congo for the Conservation of Nature, ICCN, and they are the government authority tasked with protecting all of the protected areas in the Democratic Republic of Congo. The country's 14% of the country's landmass is protected area, but they lack the resources and funding to protect all of those areas. It's very different to have a law in place if you don't have enforcement. And so we work to support the ICCN eco guards that are patrolling the forest. We provide them with rations so they can go on patrol in the forest for up to 20 days per month, away from their families. They are risking their lives. We have provided bonuses and salaries for them in the past. Now that role of bonuses and salaries is more falling on WCS. The reserve is under new management, and so we've kind of worked around on our support with ICCN eco guards. But we also provide health care. Healthcare is the #1 need in the community, the #1 request in the community, and we provide healthcare for all of the ICCN eco guards and their families to ensure that them and their families are healthy and safe, because an eco guard isn't going to protect the forest or go into the forest if he or she is sick or if their family is sick and they need to take care of their family. So we provide that service to them. We provide the healthcare. Employer provided healthcare. What a concept. I know people laugh at us. Community assistance and engagement. This is probably the #1 or the biggest pillar, most important pillar of our holistic approach. Because if you don't have the community involvement, you will not have a successful project. If you end up having to shut your doors, the community needs to be able to continue it or understand or know how to continue it. And you want their investment, because if you're trying to change their behavior or get them to change some of their practices, you have to show that you're here to support them and willing to work with them. We work in one of the most impoverished regions of the entire world. These people live on less than $1 a day, and food security is a real issue. And so we have programs, we've developed programs that address not only the improving people's livelihoods, but also protecting the forest at the same time. Our flagship program is agroforestry. And I talked about those agroforestry zones, those orange zones in the map, those boundaries were community chosen. People can technically do slash and burn agriculture when they're in those zones because they're allowed to farm on their land. But what we provide is capacity building, techniques, tools, seeds, things that they might need in order to lengthen the life of the soil. So simple concepts here in the United States in the agricultural world of crop rotation, nitrogen fixing plants, all of that is normal practices in the United States. That's not necessarily well accepted or understood there, so we provide that capacity building in the form of trees for reforestation efforts. We plant nitrogen-fixing trees in the middle of crop rows that put nitrogen back in the soil so they can stay on the same plot of land for up to 10 years instead of having to go further and further into the forest, which destroys more forest. It's dangerous because they're going further into the forest, and it's destroying Okapi habitat. So being able to stay on the same plot of land allows them to, one, keep their families safe, and also it reduces the amount of energy and effort that they need to do. But with nitrogen-fixing plants, it's also increasing their crop yield, so they're producing more food for their families, and they can sell the surplus in the local markets to other people. Another part of our agroforestry program is our experimental gardens. So they have very specific access to very specific foods, and it's usually the same foods every meal. And so we have experimental gardens that are on high-trafficked areas along major roads that show what different types of vegetables they can grow in that region. And we have 6 agroforestry sites in and around the Okapi Wildlife Reserve, and some fruits and vegetables grow better in other regions. And so we have in different regions, and we have these experimental gardens to show people what they can grow, whether it's tomatoes or eggplants, or it's hot peppers, or pineapples are very popular, although you have to kind of get the chimpanzees do try and steal them. So we have ways to hide the pineapples, which is kind of interesting. We have to they know what pineapples look like, but we have to cover them with grass so they can't see them, and that usually protects pineapples. But we show them what different types of fruits and vegetables and other foods that they can grow in order to diversify their diets, diversify their nutrients, and in turn improve their health. One of our other community assistance programs is MARFO, and this is Maman Amie de la Reserve de Fauna Okapi, which means Women Friends of the Okapi Wildlife Reserve. We have 5 women's groups located around the reserve, and this is where we invest in women to develop alternative livelihood incomes in order to reduce the pressure on the forest. So there are very gender-specific roles in this region. Women often do the cooking, the cleaning, the sewing, and men do, to be honest. But they are often the decision makers, and they have influence, because often if it's the men that need to get health care, it's the women that tell them that the men need to go to the doctor, and they have influence. And so we provide alternative livelihood incomes for these women's groups so they can develop their small micro-enterprises, whether it's sewing or knitting. These are very traditional practices in this region. Sewing, knitting, embroidery. Embroidery is becoming very popular. And we provide sewing machines, equipment, fabric for all of these women. And we also pay for the government documentation, because anytime you have a group of people that are meeting, you have to have formal recognition from the government, and we provide and pay for all of those fees so that they can meet as much as they would like. Normally it's about twice per week. The women absolutely love these groups because the men are not allowed, and they, when we do surveys with them, they talk about how much they love not being around their husbands. But it's also a mutual beneficial area for a time for them to have social interaction with all of their children. They'll breed the children. It's kind of like multiple babysitters while they're also working, generating income, and chatting, gossiping, doing whatever they want to do make and sell these items in the local markets. And we provide capacity building for them also. We bring experts that come in and teach them how to sew, how to embroider, different embroidery techniques to expand their skill set. We also provide gardening efforts, initiatives, so they can learn how to also diversify their diets. And they help run a lot of our experimental gardens and learn what they can and can't grow. And of these 5 women's groups, so far we've done 2 of them, but often when they meet, they're meeting out in the open. And we're in the rainforest, it rains, it's hot, the sun's out. So we've been constructing these buildings for 2 of the 5 of our women's groups so they can meet in inclement weather because they're restricted to what the weather is like. If it's raining one day, they can't meet, and therefore they can't generate income. So by providing an enclosed space for storage, because there's a lot of moisture in the rainforest, fabrics can go bad, so we have dry storage in these buildings. They also have workplaces, they can store all of their sewing machines, and we're in the process of providing the remaining 3 women's groups with additional buildings so that they can do these activities. I mentioned healthcare was the #1 concern of people in the region, and that is because there's no clinics, there's no access to healthcare or medicines, and the nearest hospital is a several hour drive away. So we run a Okapi clinic inside of a Kulu, and then we have agreements with Okapi clinics, not Okapi clinics, we have agreements with healthcare clinics around the reserve, so that if any ICC and eco guards or reserve staff and their families are ill or sick while they're traveling around the reserve, they can go to our Okapi clinic or dispensary and get treated by our nurses and our doctors, which do go to training in bigger cities, or they can go to any other clinic around the reserve, and then we'll be invoiced their bills. So we cover all of their health care to ensure that they're healthy and they can focus on their families and conservation. The third pillar is conservation, education, and awareness. And so these are our fantastic educators. Education is a component in everything that we do. We do a lot of school presentations. There's about 100 different small schools, primary and secondary schools located around the Okapi Wildlife Reserve. And our educators go in and give presentations to all grades. We also develop the environmental and health curriculum for the entire region, for the Ituri province. And then we also facilitate radio broadcasts. So there's not much access to electricity in these remote areas. It's mostly mud and stick huts, but everyone has a radio, a hand crank radio. And that's how they get their primary form of communication, of news, education, anything that they might need. And everyone, when you go through the town of Okulu, I can't handle it. But everyone has their radio going, and it's a different station everywhere. It's very loud. There's a lot of stimulation. But we develop radio programs, radio broadcasts that are focused on the environment, the health, the role of the ICC and Eco Guard, our agroforestry program, the benefits of joining our agroforestry program, the benefits of protecting the forest for Okapi animals and people, and those are broadcast on 8 radio stations in and around the Okapi Wildlife Reserve on a regular basis. There's a lot of challenges in this area. Eastern Congo has a reputation of poor infrastructure, a lot of insecurity. It's well known for its insecurity, political instability. And when our educators are going around the reserve to all of these different schools, they have to traverse all of these difficult infrastructure areas, all these difficult roads. Everything is mud roads, there's no paved roads. Occasionally, a foreign government will come in and redo a road. It's usually Germany or China, most likely China. But there's usually some benefit to China for that. So all of our educators travel via motorbikes, which you saw Manga traveling through motorbike. It's difficult to traverse in any of these vehicles because it's a wider footprint. And when the road is this bad, it's very, very dangerous. In this region of Congo, its reputation of being politically unstable and very insecure. There's over 120 known armed rebel groups that are hiding in the forest for various reasons. And when your truck is stranded or trapped, you are at risk of being ambushed. and all of your stuff stolen, looted, and your car burned. And so we have to traverse via motorbike. Thankfully, inside of the reserve, when our educators are moving and driving, it's safe inside of the reserve and immediately surrounding the reserve. It's getting to and from the reserve that these areas are very difficult to traverse and very dangerous. Which is why I said that the airstrip was the most critical investment and the best decision we ever made in 1994, because that is our lifeline at this point and has been for the past decade. We've been in the middle of war since 1997. It started with the Rwandan genocide in '94. They said that the war has ended, but there's still a lot of unresolved conflict. Each armed group has their own reason for fighting, and it's quite horrific, the types of things that they do. We've lost several staff members in armed conflict, so we have a lot of security measures in place. Our staff do not travel at night. We have a check-in every morning, a check-in every evening, and on our weekly calls, our weekly updates, the first thing on our agenda is what is the security situation? What roads are closed? What roads can we go on? And this the reason we've been so successful over the past 36 years and our project has maintained that consistency is because of the community. Not only is community important for implementing your project and your work, but it's also important for your staff's safety. Because we've been there so long, we have the trust of the community, and the community knows what's going on. They have their ear to the ground, they know where every rebel group is, they know where to avoid, and they communicate that to us on a regular basis. We talk to the community all of the time, and they're the ones that notify us and let us know, you can't go on this road's dangerous, we heard something happened here, you have to go around a certain way. And so that community support and that community trust has really benefited us over the past 36 years, because otherwise we wouldn't be able to function. We've had a lot of struggles over the past 36 years. Attacks, we've lost several staff. It's been difficult, but the thing that's what's kept us going is the determination of our staff and the trust of the community. But that's very depressing. I do want to kind of start going on a little bit of a positive note. It's the community that really keeps us going. And in conservation, it's very, very difficult to keep going. If anyone's worked in conservation, you feel like it's an uphill battle. It's a half a step forward and 20 steps back with whatever you do. And you have to celebrate every small win that you get. You have to celebrate everything because that's what keeps you going. And there's a reason you keep going. You keep going for the people, you keep going for the animals, and you keep going for your staff. So this past year, we planted over 108,000 trees. That may or may not seem like a lot, but that's a massive amount for us across 6 sites, because our last record amount that we planted was 80,000. So that was a huge increase, almost 30,000 increase from what our previous record was, and that's because we added a 6th site for agroforestry, that allowed us to get to that goal. In 2022, we had an end-of-year fundraising campaign, raise $100,000, plant 100,000 trees. And our staff were so fantastic, and they blew that through the water. We're planting almost 109,000 trees. I think it was 108,963 was the final total. Another one was opening the 6th agroforestry nursery. So our strategy is, first, because women have so much pull in the community, first we start in an area with a women's group, because that gets them talking about our project, our work, and that kind of introduces us to the community. And then after that, we bring in our agroforestry program, because we're providing for the community, we're improving their livelihoods, providing them with skills, capacity building, seeds, tools, whatever they need to provide for their family. And then we come in with education, and that's the why we're doing this, that we're trying to protect the forest. And so that's kind of our 3-pronged step: women's groups, agroforestry, and conservation education, in order to open a new site. So we're at the 2nd stage of our 6th site. And then we did just hire some educators, so we are starting to do a lot of education in this area, northeast of the reserve. So now we have the reserve fully encompassed with all 6 of our sites, and we're very excited about that. And a win. This year was the first time that we captured an African golden cat on camera trap. This is a very rare species of small cat. It's only found in Central and Eastern Africa. And Usually, when you have snares that are present in the forest, African golden cats are usually the first species to go because they easily get trapped in snares. From some African golden cat experts that we spoke to. They were very excited that we documented African golden cats. And this is very, very near the Pulu, so it's a sign of almost a near pristine rainforest that's still intact. We have bongo. We've been getting a lot of bongo lately. I set up this camera trap 10 days earlier, so I suspect my scent was still on it because you'll see him exhibiting some nervous behaviors. But we've been seeing herds of, this herd, you only see this one, but this herd was about 5 individuals, but we've seen herds of 15 or 20 individuals on the camera trap, which is fantastic. We love it.